Basically, she used her cell phone to call her dealer to deliver at the school. I said, "Hey, young man, how you doing?" And it was like, "Oh, F you." This is a mom who's addicted to his pallet is behind the couch. Mom's doing whatever she needs on the other side of the couch to get her. And then he said, when I came to McAdams, I saw that there was more to life than what I was living.
If you're curious about what is trending in Christian education, you've come to the right place. Hi, I'm Delina Wallace, homeschool mom, microschool leader, and education missionary. And this is Wise and Otherwise, where we are sharing real stories from the front lines of a growing movement in Christian education. Stories of pastors, parents, and everyday believers stepping up in new ways to shape the next generation. From microschools to school boards, we'll explore how the church can lead in education again, creatively, affordably, and in true partnership with families. If you've ever wondered what role you can play, I hope these conversations help you find your next step. It is wise for the church to get involved in leading education. Otherwise, who will? Come on, Christians, let's lead the way and redeem education for the glory of God. Thank you, and welcome back to another show of Wise and Otherwise. Today I have with me Chuck Knowles, who is the executive director and the founder of McAdams Academy in Wichita. Chuck, thank you for being on the show.
You bet. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah. So Chuck and I had a conversation a few weeks ago, and I just knew that I needed to have him on the show. It was so inspiring to learn his story and about his school that he has in Wichita, Kansas. So I'd love to ask you some questions and just let our audience know what you're doing. And it really is a powerful ministry that you have going right now.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes. Okay. So I already mentioned your school is McAdams Academy. Can you tell me, first of all, just a little bit about what type of model the school is? And then I'll go in and ask a little bit about the history and your why for starting it.
You bet. Well, McAdams is technically a behavior program, and we deliver therapy through a school setting, a classroom setting. Now, it is unique in the sense that kids can pick up credits that go on their transcript when they're expelled from school and at our program. So it is a school because a school is any place you learn. And so I have a little broader perspective of what education is and what a school is. And we've been doing this for 11 years. We started in 2014. I was chaplain at our juvenile facilities. We had 3 facilities. And I began to see, as I would continue to follow these kids out of lockup into their homes, I started to realize that they didn't have parents around, and they're back on the streets, and there's no guidance. And so I started thinking about an evening reporting center or a day reporting center to get these kids into a facility with some kind of structure. And it wasn't long before the county, I'm in Sedgwick County, Wichita, Kansas. They asked if I would consider starting a school for these kids who are expelled. Since I had already been working on a reporting center, I had a lot of the groundwork done. I said, sure. And, we started, 11 years ago.
Wow, that's incredible. So you're serving students who have behavioral issues and they've been expelled from public schools. Is that correct?
Correct. And we have a lot of foster kids who, again, have the high behavior. And in our society, it's hard for people to understand how large of a problem that is. And we tend to see kids as problem children or, they just need better discipline. And I won't minimize those things, but I also know that there's more to the story than just a rotten kid or a wild kid. And so we try to do our teacher student ratio is lower And so we have time to stop everything, work on the problem, and then get the kid right back into the classroom and continue working on credits or behavior, whichever
Mhm.
the case may be.
Yeah, that's great. And so just I'd love to learn a little bit about you as an individual and, what inspired you? Why were you drawn to serve children from this background?
Well, we all have a story, and and most of us don't understand that our stories continue to happen and continue to evolve. But I grew up in an abusive alcoholic family, and I was not the troublemaker per se. I was the one that hid in the back of the classroom. I wanted to avoid problems at all cost. And so, and I was also the way God made me. I was also um, kind of I wouldn't let kids around me bully other kids. Uh, you know how kids are, making fun of handicapped kids or things like that always was seemed natural to stick up for those kids. Little did I know years later, obviously that's the way God intended me to be. So um, I I wasn't allowed to do much of anything growing up because in addictive families, alcohol, drugs, there is this philosophy. They some call it the castle mentality. They don't Parents don't want you out of that castle. They don't want to invite people into that castle to see the problems. And so what several things obviously mold us. And I was coming home, well, I went to a party in ninth grade, after basketball games. We would have a little party at somebody's house. And again, my dad let me go. And I remember walking up to the front door, a nice home. Now we lived in a very clean home, but it was not well taken care of and maintained. But walked up to this nice home, one of my teammates, and the mother answered the door and said, "Chuck, what a great game as usual." And I tell people the thing that changed my life was the as usual because I didn't trust adults, especially. Didn't trust anybody, but adults specifically. And it was that as usual told me that I had an adult paying attention to me.
Mm.
And I saw this nice home and I thought, I could be different. And that doesn't sound like much, does it? But it's those little things in God's timing that changes our lives. And that was the first step of me seeing that life could be different. So I have that past, and then being a chaplain in the facilities, I begin to see a lot of different kinds of scenarios with kids. And I remember going to a home. I would give the kids my card, and if they called me when they got out of lockup, I would take them out to eat. What's funny is I always had little siblings going with me, with their brother, and so call me when you get out. I'll take you to lunch. And I started noticing that there are no parents. There are no adults. And the kid just got out of lockup and he's just hanging out on his front porch. And so again, that was part of the motivation to start a program, realizing that these kids don't have any direction. And so I just started very simple, started the pattern of got a small grant from the county and and that developed with, it was myself and one retired school teacher, with a class of 25 of these kids, and I was like, "Oh, man, that's a challenge, I'm just telling you." But I would do, again, simple things like, teach them nutrition by helping them, fix our lunches, or just very basic practical things, and, of course, we were online, and they were picking up credits, and so it just continued to grow, my vision, what I think God was leading me to do, just continued to grow. And I will say that couple of well, in the Hebrew Bible, we have tons of verses telling us, to be the father to the fatherless, to help the widows in their troubles, and to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. And then Hosea 4:6, even though it's prophet talking about our ignorance of our God, Hosea 4:6 says, "My people perish because of their lack of knowledge." And so that's really the catalyst and the mindset of why I continue doing the McAdams. And even though people don't get it, but I see the real need. And you do any type of simple research, you see how our youth continue to be, I call it ignored, but it's in a way that people don't realize they're ignoring these kids. So, so that's the catalyst. That's kind of the short, brief history and the progression, of what we do. And like I said, I've been doing it for 11 years. We had we had 14 kids graduate
Well,
this year,
that's great. That's
which
great.
is twice as many as we've ever had.
Wow.
We have a waiting list, and just patiently waiting for God to provide us with a building because we're out of space, and I need staff. And so just a day by day walk, right? Just like everybody else.
Yeah, but I love to hear the background and the starting point, just it takes simple steps of faith and hearing you talk about how God created you a certain way, like with a bent towards, people in these situations and even your own background, with your family. So seeing you step out in faith and obedience, even in small ways and not knowing for sure what was going to happen, but building on that year after year and following what the Lord puts in front of you. It really is so inspiring. And I feel like just people need to know more about the ministry that you offer and how you operate out of your conviction and how you're serving these students in K-12 education in a very unique way and working with some kids and students that other teachers would find nearly impossible to serve. And so it's so important. It's so meaningful and impactful in our community. And I think a lot of people might not be aware of what you're doing. Um, so, can you tell me a little bit about your faith? And has your faith, you mentioned talking about scripture and the Hebrew Bible and things like that, has your faith helped to shape the school in any way and how you serve the kids?
Well, it is. And before we go on, I just want to remind people that I think Christians today misunderstand ministry. I think we forget the simple things, simple that are great. We're created in God's image. And so the things I'm doing, here's how my brain works, okay? People struggle with the way my brain works. I struggle with the way my brain works sometimes, okay? Um, the reality is this. I used to tell my wife, I used to have a counseling ministry, but I would tell my wife that, you staying home and changing all the poopy diapers and wiping the noses, that's a ministry. It's just as great as the pastor standing at the pulpit every weekend. And so I think Christians need to get out of this little box of what we call ministry and realize every day we are doing a ministry. And so the only reason I'm where I'm at is because God's got a plan, and it's he either makes it happen or it doesn't. And so we've got to remove ourselves from this achievement mentality and just say, okay, the setback I just had, that's in God's plan. I needed that setback, you know. I needed to understand pain from this perspective. I needed to understand feeling uncomfortable. So just for anybody listening, I just want to offer that because we're forgetting that he is the this will scare people, but he's the author of our pain. He's the author of our joy. He's the author of every small detail. And so we should not be intimidated, or we should not feel like we are somehow a lower class Christian. Now, back to your question, which being an old man, I forgot what it was.
Well, being who I am, I forgot what it was too at this.
Yeah. Oh, my faith. Well, again, everything we do has to be based on a belief that God is in control, that we were put here to serve him. So I used to have this saying that people ask me, "Oh, have you read this new book?" It's like, no, I don't read books from dead people, because you try to get through the phase of, we go through different phases even as believers. This book is out and this book is out, and so that's why I said, be comfortable with who God made you. We're created in his image. That alone should knock our socks off, right? Just to really believe that. So, I think everything we do is ministry and faith. I'm, um, 67, so, it'd be 68. And so it seems like, man, haven't I gone through this, Lord? Didn't you take me through this a little while ago? But there's always a different facet, right? We're at a different stage in our life. And so, I had a natural ability, my gift is discernment, and I had a natural ability to connect with kids, having a weird sense of humor. They laugh, and, uh, I have, always I've never felt sorry for people. I've been empathetic. But when you start to feel sorry for people, you lose your ability to minister. Um, and so I have empathy because I've been through some of the things that these kids have been through. I understand. And so uh, the biggest challenge is trying to help people see that education is more than just a child in a classroom. Um, we work with parents. We have family counseling times. I have grandmothers calling me, say, "What do I do? I've got a problem with, my grandson, my granddaughter." And so we pull together and work things out. And then think about this. McAdams is spending so much time with these kids every day. And then we send them home, and you'll see this a lot. They go home for the weekend, and guess they come back just crazy, sometimes. And so that was several years ago. Thought about need to have more of a support system for the parents. And then we still send those kids back home with a community which they came out of that needs to be ministered to. And that's my next push. And you mentioned K through 12. Right now we're just middle school to high school. But my goal is, prophetically speaking there, is K through 12 because uh, elementary kids are being expelled from school, removed from school at a higher rate than middle school and high school kids.
Wow. So tell me what alternative do students have when they are kicked out of school? What happens unless they come to McAdams Academy?
In Kansas, they don't have one. And that's what I was seeing. They're, you know, they're on the street or they're doing nothing. Um, so that's what's unique about McAdams is that we will offer that uh, to the kids and provide. Yeah, we uh, not in a tip. We're in a temporary place right now, uh, but we had washing machines. We would do kids' laundry
Mm.
and teach them personal hygiene and give them cologne and have women come in and do makeover for the young ladies and just different things like that to give them again that sense of wow, I think I'd like to be different. How can I be different? And that's why it's so important to have volunteers come in and just being around those people. I had a kid come up to me the other day and said, "Do you wear cologne?" I said, "Yeah." Is there a problem? No, it just really smells good. Isn't that amazing? We know, I mean, but he just that was so foreign to him. And so, and I think we miss those little cues in our society on how to be real and how to be a mentor, just how to be a helper.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing a couple examples, like with the lady who just spoke those simple words. They sound so simple, but it was life changing for you.
Yeah.
And we don't think about the small things. We don't think about how just a comment spoken into their life, in their time of need. I'm sure a lot of these families and these kids are feeling desperate. And you were there to meet them and offer a lifeline and to give them hope for their future at a time when I can only imagine they feel desperate and discouraged. And just the simple things of helping with hygiene and, offering things that maybe a father figure would not or would have done if they had a father at home. And so I can't imagine the impact that you are having on your students in the moments and the time that you get to spend with them. It's
Yeah.
great.
And again, I think we forget that we do have a sovereign God that loves people more than we can imagine, right? It was a comfort to me as a parent to know God loves my kids more than I do. And so, um, scripture teaches us all the time to guard the words we say, to capture thoughts, make it obedient to Christ. And so you're exactly right. It's when it's heartfelt, the simplest words mean the most. Um, I had a boy. I struggle sometimes with the. I've had Christians say, "Well," I've said, "Hey, why don't you come pick up one of our kids, take them shopping with your family, groceries, and then just a couple hours, well, I don't think I want those kind of kids around my kids." And it breaks my heart because, all of us would be those kind of kids if it wasn't for this divine presence and grace of God, right? And and the thought of, not wanting to be around those kids. Good example, we had a young man who came to our school and had been expelled, and, so I get to know him. It's kind of easy for me to build a relationship with the kids. And, they see me as grandpa, so they gotta be nice to me, right? Uh, so, and and I said, "Well, little brother, tell me your story." And he said, "What'd you do to get expelled?" And he told me and got a little deeper and as a teen, he lost his father. His father died to a disease, and his father was everything to him. He had a good relationship with dad. Mom was struggling with drugs and alcohol and wasn't, living with them at that time. And so he said, when dad died, I didn't have anybody. And he said, and so I started looking, got into the wrong group of kids, got in trouble, started going down the path of my mom, drugs, alcohol. And then he said, um, and then when I came to McAdams, I saw that there was more to life than what I was living. And it's just such a powerful story. I mean, tell me that it's his fault that his dad died. No, it- it's his fault. I'm old fashioned. We're all responsible for our choices. I don't care what's going on in your life. You're responsible for your choices. But I mean, the difference between my grandkids or, your kids or being like the kids I work with every day is one tragic event, is one thought away. And so I hold the kids at McAdams to a high level of accountability. There's consequences for choices. I don't believe in the punishment aspect. I mean, you know, the wages of sin is death. Well, we all deserve death. I mean, in a thought, that's sin. We deserve death. So to come away from this punitive behavior and everything we do should be redemptive. And I think that's probably what I stress most, our philosophy about um, how we treat kids and not to get all up when they start cussing at you and, is to be able to handle that. Don't get offended. Big deal. There's a consequence for your behavior, for your language. We have those laid out. And so we give them consequences. Sometimes it's cleaning the graffiti off the wall they just put on it, messing up the bathroom. And so sometimes you're in there working with them, helping them clean up the mess. You get a chance to tell them you're not in trouble. This is just a consequence of your behavior. And kids don't really understand that too well. So we're very grateful to have that opportunity to do what we do.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of Wise and Otherwise. We'd like to ask you to take a minute and please rate and review our podcast so that others can learn more about us and just to continue to show your support for this work that we're doing. It would mean so much. So please, if you're on Spotify or Apple or YouTube, take a minute and give us a good review. Yeah, I would love to hear more about what a typical day looks like. And so these opportunities that come up for ministry and conversation and just teaching life skills and things like that, are those just interwoven and you still are providing like the basic academics? And maybe tell us a little bit what a typical day would look like there for you.
Well, there is no typical day. um, but but we have a structure. We check them in the morning, and we will wand them, and we don't let them have phones in the classrooms. And at one time early on, I had this girl who ran out of the room, out of the classroom, and went outside, went to a car, and I saw her come back in. Now, of course, there's hoops she has to jump through to get back into the school after you leave. But basically, she used her cell phone to call her drug dealer to deliver drugs at the school.
Oh my God.
And so I'm thinking, okay, there's a problem with that. Phones need to go away. So the typical day, they'll come, we'll wand them, they'll change into a uniform, McAdams uniform, and then they'll go to class. We work online, but we have teachers working with them, beside them. And some kids reading skill, we evaluate them to see where they're at. We don't just rely on the grades they've gotten from public school. And so the teacher there, we handpick classes that they need and that would work for them at the time, And so teachers are working alongside them. We have a ratio about 1 to 5 to 7. Yeah, 1 to 7's per teacher student ratio. And we'll have two teachers, a teacher and a para in a room. And then we'll have a break. We have a wonderful cook who cooks home cooked meals. So we'll have a break in the morning for a breakfast, and then they'll have some time in the gymnasium, and then go back to class. We A kid may be struggling, and we may need to have him step outside the classroom. They lay their head down. They are asked, okay, bring to get your head up off the table. If they can't do that, we'll ask them to step outside. And this isn't punitive. It's just that, again, in the real world, there are rules and guidelines. If you're going to be successful, in other words, if you're going to get a job that you can earn a living wage, there are certain things you've got to do. So we may have some kids sitting outside the classroom. We may have a blow up. Occasionally, we'll have a fist fight, and we will calm them down. And then, as soon as they're calm enough to sit across the table, we'll work out the problem and send them back into the classroom.
Hmm.
And now that scares people, but it works. A lot of time, it's a misunderstanding, and it's taken care of at that time. And then they're buddies again, or friends again. Now the ladies, the girls are the worst, okay? The guy's perspective, they let things simmer a long time, and the guys just blow up, it's over with, but, all you ladies out there, I'm not picking on you. God made us different, and your differences, are what keeps us men, on the right track. But, so we'll have lunch. The teachers, always sit at the table with the kids, so that the teachers don't go off to lunch someplace. We're working with them, trying to control the conversation. We don't allow the gang talk, the profanity, things like that. And then, they'll have another little break time, go back to class, work on stuff. And, at the end of the day, we check them out. And, in the mornings, the teachers will have a meeting and say, "Man, I'm really struggling with so and so." And it's like, "Well, I got a good relationship with him. Why don't I?" Another teacher will say, "I got a good relationship with him. Why don't I talk to him tomorrow?" Sometimes they ask to talk to me. Uh, and so it's very fluid. It's nothing really dogmatic, but it's just trying to be sensitive to what is that need. So think about this. You think about the little boy, the 14-year-old who came to school, and I said, "Hey, young man." Now, this is back when I was checking in the kids. I don't get to do that anymore because I'm trying to build relationships and find funding for the school all the time. But I said, "Hey, young man, how you doing?" And it was like, "Oh, F you." Okay, he's having a bad day. And so a little while later, as we're checking in, I said, Michael, what's the matter?" And he said, "Well, my mom, I don't know where she's at. She told me last night, she was going to go get some clean clothes for me, and I haven't seen her." So this 14-year-old had to get up in the morning, take his siblings to grandma's house or auntie's house, and then he came to McAdams. Now, do you expect that young man to jump in and start doing academics? He's worried sick. He's seen his mom abused. This is a mom who's addicted to drugs. His palate is behind the couch. Mom's doing whatever she needs on the other side of the couch to get her drugs. And so he's seen his mom abused in many different ways. And you expect him to come in and say, "Hi, Chuck, how you doing? Great day." And so those are the things you've got to be sensitive to. And just because you see bad behavior doesn't mean that there is a ulterior motive. The kid didn't know how to cope with that. And so that's part of the things that we will take time and go out of our way to make phone calls, trying to find mom. And at least he knows that we're there for him. So there's just a lot of those unique situations that most of us are not used to.
Right, right. Well, it just seems like the Lord's given you such a tender heart for them and given you the grace and the wisdom you need to serve these kids. Um, so I'd like to talk a little bit about the support that you have currently that you need more of.
Yeah.
Would love to help raise awareness for the ministry that you have here in Wichita, Kansas. And do you have some churches who have supported you, and do they support you on a regular basis?
Yeah, we have about 3 churches that support us on a regular basis. I'm extremely grateful
Right.
for that. I am, and the flesh part of me wants to be discouraged that we have this tremendous ministry to our community, and it's right here in our laps, you know? But that, I do think there's a tremendous fear involved, and I don't discount that. I'm not saying that that's not valid, but, um, but I think as churches, we have the ability to impact our community in so many different ways. So we have a church that will do our Thanksgiving and Christmas meals. We make a big deal, all these so many spoons and forks on the table, you don't know what to do with them, and the proper procedure, the salad, the drinks, the main course, the dessert. It's kind of funny. You see these big tough gang guys come in and like folded napkin, and they sit down in front of this plate and they're like, what do I do? But, we have a church that does those meals for us and a very special time. We go to their church, and then, we just have a little old country church that's been supporting me like $50 a month,
Oh,
4
I
times
love
a
it.
year.
That's
Yeah,
great.
and then we have some other churches, of course, the church I go to, supports us, and so very, 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 very grateful. The biggest support we have are just the common folk that, um, they come and do a tour and they see the kids we work with, and their heart is just pulled in that direction. And I think, since my vision is a little, it's kind of big because what I initially this we're trying to get a school that's not being used in Wichita, and this is the first year in 11 years I've been able to bid on a school from the school district. There were a lot of hoops and uh, things you can't do, but we have a wonderful new school board and superintendent that understands what we're doing, and they've paved our way to at least be able to bid on some schools. And that school, we're just going to call it the community campus. We'll have people come in with different talents, trading uh, trades and counseling and, even community theaters and things, just to get the whole community involved. And plus, our kids will be a part of that during the day. Automotive, how to change oil, how to take care of simple things in cars. So now that's the big overall picture. People get lost and think, Chuck, you're stepping out of your realm here. And the reality is, no, we're not. It's education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So uh, funding has always been a challenge. And again, it's unfortunate that people see these kids as they brought this all on themselves, and we'd rather put our money towards another ministry. And again, God is sovereign. Don't have any bitterness, any I just kind of think, well, you're missing the blessing.
Yeah.
So we have a few grants, uh, but my goal is I want to build a foundation and that we have other revenue. We can, our kids could generate revenue or leasing space in our this building. I hope we get that are complementary to the kids and the families, the needs that they have. And if we can do that, then build a base, and then we can offer services to the community. And so that's my goal. Like I said, is serve people. But I do research. My doctorate is in social research, and so I'm a person of facts and problem solving, and so anyway, yes.
Yeah, that's great. That's
The
exciting.
any kind of
Big question.
help anybody wants to give financially, I mean, look us up on the website, and,
Yeah.
so
And I assume you always are needing volunteers, and
oh,
what are some ways that people could volunteer?
well, there sky's the limit. Um, you could come in and just eat lunch with the kids. You could serve them food. You could play checkers, chess, and, uh, you know, basketball. I've had ladies come in and bring sewing machines, a group of sewing machines. The kids have made blankets and stuffed animals and, robes. I remember a kid making this fluffy, I mean, big robe, 2 times the size he was, and just walking down the hallway just as proud as could be, in his robe. So really the talents that you have, um and I mentioned the makeovers, the
Mhm.
baking, it's just unlimited. Find the things you like to do and just say, "Hey, could I have an hour a week or, hour a month?" And come in and do that. So,
So, can I ask you a little bit more about your source of funding? Do students have to pay tuition to attend?
no, that, that was one of our first grants we got 11 years ago, and we still have it, but those kids who have been expelled don't pay anything. And we've moved to kind of a sliding scale because the difficult thing is we get parents call us and say, I need my son or daughter to come back to your school. I've never seen him treat his family like he says, thank you. He says, please. He, he's doing his homework. And so can he come back? So we try to figure out case by case, and this is challenging, but case by case, if a kid's doing well, if they're close to graduating, we will try to charge some kind of tuition based on income. And of course, that's the area that really needs to be expanded. I see this as a prevention program. Not everyone sees it as a prevention. They just want us to handle kids who have been expelled. But I see it as a prevention program. And so that's the area we need to expand. And we just need to find people that have a heart for something like this or want to be a part of something like this to give. We need to take it to the next level.
Mm.
Uh, Nonprofits will go out of business. Around half of them go out of business in the first 5 years, uh, and 30% or 35% go out in the next 10 years. And so McAdams is just over that hurdle, and think that it is God's design that we reach out into the community. And so
Yes.
we need,
And you're doing it. You're leading by example and have been for over a decade.
yeah,
It's so encouraging to hear about what you're doing. Um, So I hope prayerfully that there are pastors and if not just congregation members, believers listening to our show. And I'd love for them to help and to contribute, to get involved. What would your message, if you just have, one final closing word to the church, the body of Christ who hears about your school and the opportunity, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say that if there's any inkling, if you feel God is leading you in any way, um, if you want to pick my brain to see how you might do something like this in your church, uh, we can partner together. I'll tell you all my mistakes so you don't make them. And yeah, if God's leading you to financially support us, we respect that. I mean, I respect $50 a month. That's God's money, and I call it the widow's mite. We're supported by the widow's mite. So keep it simple. If anything, if you're passionate about any of the things I've said, just call me up, email me, and I will love to visit and talk about what we do.
That's great. That's great. And please tell us one more time, what is your website so people can find you or share your email as well?
Yeah. Um, so McAdamsAcademy.org, and we have some videos, some testimonials, and just Chuck at McAdamsAcademy.com. And I promise I will get to the email. I get behind sometimes, but so I love the opportunity to be able to share. And even if you have no interest in McAdams Academy, please consider your ministry in this world. It is important. God put you here. It is not an accident that you're here. And the challenges that you're going through. I remember one time the Lord telling me, so I was like, Lord, what the heck is going on? I don't get it. I mean, what does this have to do with me? And he just said very plainly, remember, the things we go through, it's not always about us. Sometimes it's for other people. And so just encourage us as the body. I know the world is afraid of a lot of things, but we are in a great position to be the leaders and not the followers. So
Yes.
if anything, this might encourage you to step out on that little thing you have been wanting to do,
Yeah.
or you looking for a place to support, call it. So
That's great.
don't be bashful as believers.
Yeah. Amen. Thank you for the encouragement. And thank you so much for your time today, for your service in your school and your ministry. And I pray blessings on all of your efforts there and your students and you personally.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you to our listeners. We hope you'll join us again for another episode of Wise and Otherwise. Bye.